In March of last year, a dozen eggs hit $8.17. Yeah, you heard that right. $8 for 12 eggs. Today, they're around $2. So problem solved. Except your grocery bill is still going up somehow. And here's what I found. It's not just inflation. It's there by design. So I'll start with something personal. Sometime back, I started paying attention to my own grocery receipts. About a year or two ago, not budgeting for real, just noticing that the same items at the same store, same brands, all that. The total kept climbing. $1 more here, $2 more there. My wife was noticing the same thing. So we went back and looked at what we were actually spending, comparing receipts from 2021, 2023. The same basket of about a dozen staples in 2021 cost us around $47. By 2023, it was around $63, and today, it's over $70. That's not just inflation. Inflation over that period accounts for maybe half of that increase. So where's the rest coming from? So before I get into the system behind those numbers, let me talk about who this actually hurts. Because when I say groceries are more expensive, that means very different things depending on who you are. If you're making a comfortable income, a 25% increase in your grocery bill would definitely annoy you. You'd notice it for sure. Maybe switching brands or skipping a few extras here and there, but according to the USDA, households in the lowest income bracket spend about 33% of their before-tax income on food and groceries. A third. So when prices spike, they don't just switch brands. Meals get cut down. Fresh produce gets swapped out. Varieties of meat and protein get smaller alongside their portions. So this isn't just budgeting. It's about a system that makes food the literal thing we can't live without. Aggressively hard to afford. Now let me tell you about something that sounds like it has nothing to do with your grocery bill. Right now, the CDC is tracking a Cyclospora outbreak across 34 states. Over 1,600 lab-confirmed cases, more than 5,000 total, and counting. Michigan alone has reported over 1,500 cases, with hundreds more all over the map in states like Georgia, Ohio, and here in North Carolina where I live. Cyclospora is a parasite. It contaminates produce, lettuce, berries, fresh herbs. You eat it, then you get violently ill. For most people, it's a miserable few weeks, but for some it can be quite serious. But here's the thing. Cyclospora isn't new. We've known about it for decades. So the question isn't why it exists, it's why it reached your plate in the first place. Because the agency responsible for catching contamination before it hits our grocery stores, the FDA, has had its inspection capacity systematically reduced. Remember Elon Musk and Doge? Foreign food safety inspections have hit historic lows. Staffing cuts, budget reductions, proposals to shift routine inspections to states, many of which were never designed to handle such capacities. We see inspections drop and contaminations rise, spiking recalls across the country. In 2025, FDA food recalls hit a 9-year high, with 571 recalls, nearly 140 million units of food pulled from shelves. That's a 290% increase from the year before. So when those recalls spike, supply tightens. And we all know when supply is tight and demand goes up, the prices go up too, right? And when food companies get sued over contamination, which they do, they don't eat that cost. Much like Trump's tariffs, they build it into the next year's pricing, meaning we are literally paying for the food safety failures before they even happen. The Cyclospora outbreak isn't separate from your grocery bill. It is your grocery bill. But it's just one chapter in a much longer story. So if it's not just inflation driving up your bill, then what is it? I've found 4 forces, each one making the others worse. Together they form a system that isn't breaking, and it's working exactly as it's designed to. So let's start with who's selling you your food. Walmart controls over 21% of U.S. grocery markets. Kroger about 8.5%, with Costco coming in at around 8% and Albertsons around 5%. The top 4 retailers control over 40% of what you buy and where you buy it. And that's just groceries. Now let's look at the meat industry. 4 companies, again, JBS, Cargill, Tyson Foods, and National Beef control between 80 and 85% of all beef processing in the United States. 85%. When four companies control that much of the supply, they don't need to compete on prices the way that you think they do. Prices never race to the bottom, guys. They anchor just below the leading competitor. And the biggest player has no incentive to go lower in pricing. But here's where it gets really sneaky. Let me show you something. You walk down that bread aisle and you see choices, right? Bread all over the place. Wonder Bread, Nature's Own, Dave's Killer Bread, Tasty Cake, different brands, different price points, right? Different packaging, different everything, yeah? All owned by one company, Flower Foods. So you're not choosing between competitors. You're choosing between labels designed to make you think you have options. Like George Collins said, you have the illusion of choice. Now let's get back into the food safety piece because it's worse than I've told you before. Over the last 2 years, like I said, the FDA's food inspection capacity has been systematically reduced. Doge. Foreign food safety inspections, like I said, hit historic lows, staffing cuts, budget reductions, and proposals to shift inspections to states. Like I said, they're not designed to handle that. This was the Doge strategy. Get it off the national and put it on the state. They can say it's fraud, waste, and abuse, but they're saving money by not having to pay for it, right? And the result is exactly what you'd expect. In 2025, FDA food recalls hit a 9-year high. 571 recalls, nearly 140 million units of food pulled off our shelves. But in the first quarter of this year, recalls have already topped 57 million units, nearly double from this same period last year. So every recall is a supply shock that raises our prices. And every time a company gets sued or fined, they don't just absorb those costs. They pass it on to you and me in the next round of pricing. We seem to be paying for it all, their safety net included. So this isn't about a climate change debate. It's a climate change receipt, actually, because drought in cattle country means smaller herds, and so does a screwworm outbreak, which means less beef is being produced. And less beef means prices are going to go straight up and stay up even when conditions have improved, because rebuilding herds take years, not months. You know, you're raising actual animals. Flooding in California's Central Valley, where most of the country's lettuce, berries, and nuts are grown, destroys crops completely. In 2023 alone, California's flooding damaged nearly 80,000 acres of cropland. Here's the pattern that really matters. These events, remember, used to happen like once a decade, and now they're happening multiple times a year. You cannot deny what's happening there. The food system was engineered for stability. You know, predictable seasons and crop yields, predictable prices even. It was not engineered for this chaos. And every time a crop fails or a herd shrinks, the cost travels down one path. You know which one that is. Right down to us. We see it in the checkout line every day. Now let me connect these four forces because separately they sound like bad luck, right? I mean, consolidation means fewer companies control more of your food, right? Trump's deregulation means fewer people are ensuring that our food is safe, right? Climate disruption means that the supply is less reliable than it ever has been. And every time something breaks, a recall, a crop failure, a contamination outbreak, any otherwise shock to our supply, the cost doesn't stay with those companies. It doesn't even stay with the regulators who cut the inspections or the processors who dominate the markets. It lands on us. You're not just buying groceries. You're buying the risk the system generates but refuses to absorb. So what do you actually do with this information? You say you're not a call your congressman or a sign a petition type, which I do suggest. We need to be letting our representatives know exactly how we feel. But here are a few other suggestions. 1, know who owns what. You can't make good choices if you don't know that you're being handled, right? Like I said, Walmart, Costco, Kroger, Albertsons, Flower Foods and its bread empire, JBS, Cargill, Tyson, National Beef, and the rest of the meat industry. When you know who's behind the label, the illusion of choice dissolves. And that's step 1. Number 2, buy outside the system whenever you can. Farmers markets, local food co-ops, community-supported agriculture, or CSAs. And In the area where I live, they go by produce box, where you buy directly from a farm and get a share of what they produce. It's not always cheaper. I'm not going to pretend it is, but every dollar that bypasses the big four is a dollar that doesn't reinforce that consolidation. Yeah, it's a small act, but small acts multiplied across millions of people are how patterns start to shift. Number 3, see the pattern and not just the headline. Next time there's a food recall or you notice that your grocery bill has jumped, the next time you see a headline about contamination or shortages, don't just ask what the heck is happening this week. Ask who's benefiting and who pays for this and what broke in the system to even let this reach me in the first place. Because the news will tell you what happened, but now you know the pattern. All right, so please help me and show the channel some love and the show some love by doing all the things. Like and subscribe and share, okay? Hit me up in the comments section. I respond always, all right? Thanks for staying along, and as always, stay grounded, stay formed, and stay loud quietly. This is the Quiet Loud. Y'all take care.